Anti-Semitism on U.S. college campuses didn't end with the crackdowns on pro-Hamas protests. Now it appears college professors are institutionalizing an ideological shift that may threaten academic freedom by endorsing boycotts. Ken Tashjy is higher education fellow at Campus Reform, and he believes the policy change smacks of anti-Semitism. Ken, it's good to talk with you again. So explain what's happening with this shift in approach for the American Association of University Professors and why you think it smacks of anti-Semitism.
Sure, Gary, and thank you very much for having me. Look, the AAUP has been identified as the primary defender of academic freedom for the better part of over 100 years. And during that time, they have sought to preserve and advance academic freedom across higher education. And really what that means is preserving the ability to engage in open debate, discussion, and dialogue among academics, to engage in research, whether it's across town or across international boundaries, regardless of governmental policies. And in that role, they have always opposed the use of academic boycotts, and they've always viewed those the use of that tactic as antithetical to academic freedom. And an academic boycott is when an educational institution or organization refuses to engage with other colleges and universities because of institutional or governmental policies they don't agree with. And as I indicated, the AAUP has been steadfastly opposed to the use of boycotts against any institutions across the country for the better part of 2 decades. It was only recently that they have amended and changed that view and perspective, where they now take the position that academic boycotts can be an appropriate method to try to change institutional or governmental policies. And I can point to a couple of reasons why I believe that is a shift away from their principles and in the direction much more of an ideological view and perspective.
Well, why now, Ken? Tell us why now. I mean, they're 110 years old. Why now?
Understood. Well, it's no coincidence that they changed their view and perspective on this issue soon after the terrorist attacks on Israel by Hamas terrorists. It's also no coincidence that their new position now aligns themselves with the campus protesters and the protests that we saw rage across campuses last spring, which we know resulted in a disruption of the educational environment, which caused destruction of property on campuses, and which resulted in intimidation and threats of Jewish students. It also aligns them now with the views of the BDS movement, the boycott, sanction, and divestment movement that has been called for across the country by a variety of organizations, including Students for the Justice in Palestine. And lastly, it aligns them with the position of its union affiliate, the American Federation of Teachers, which has lost no opportunity to minimize anti-Semitism in higher education, calling the congressional investigations nothing more than a witch hunt, and who actively and full-throatedly supported their faculty's participation in those disruptive protests. So they really look to have abandoned their principal stance opposing boycotts and now embrace this ideological view, which to many is anti-Semitic.
Well, what academic boycotts then do you expect to see? Will we see one against companies who do business with Iran and its development of nuclear weapons? Who will they demand universities boycott?
Well, exactly. That's the right question. You can go back to 2005 and 2013 when the AAUP opposed proposed boycotts against Israel. And again, since that time, they have never endorsed or supported an academic boycott, whether it be against China, given their discrimination against the Uyghurs or the Tibetans, or whether it be against Nigeria and their silent genocide of Christians, or frankly in any other country. So the question becomes, why now? And I think the answer is because it is an effort to further that anti-Israel sentiment that we're seeing spread across college campuses.
Ken, on another issue, university issue, as the presidential election approaches, in the classroom, a University of Kansas professor advocated violence against men who refused to vote for a female for president.
It's what frustrates me. There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them. They clearly don't understand the way the world works. Did I say that? Scratch that from the recording. I don't want the deans hearing that I said that.
Anybody who's seen the clip of this faculty member should be appalled. And there are some out there that are claiming that he has some degree of academic freedom to have engaged in this kind of conduct in the classroom. And I'm going to assert that this has nothing to do with academic freedom, but this is just academic bullying. And not the kind of bullying you talk about in the schoolyard. This is where an individual in a position of power, the faculty member, uses that power to intimidate, threaten, and coerce subordinates, and in this case, students who disagree or have a vastly different view or perspective than the faculty member. And that is antithetical to anything having to do with academic freedom, which is really based on open debate, discussion, and dialogue, trying to encourage your students to engage in critical thinking and intellectual discourse and intellectual curiosity, none of which is going to occur in a classroom where a professor tells you if you don't agree with him, in essence, you should be put up against the wall and shot.
Okay, I will say that he was suspended. Ken Tashjy, Campus Reform Higher Education Fellow, thank you for sharing your insights. We appreciate you.
Gary, thanks very much for having me.